The Boeing EA-18G Growler is an American carrier-based electronic warfare aircraft, a specialized version of the two-seat A-18F Super Hornet. The EA-18G will replace the Northrop Grumman EA-6B Prowlers in service with the United States Navy. The Growler's electronic warfare capability is primarily provided by Northrop Grumman. The EA-18G began production in 2007 and entered operational service in late 2009. Development, requirement and testing. On November 15, 2001, Boeing successfully completed an initial flight demonstration of A-18F F1 fitted with the ALQ-99 electronic warfare system to serve as the EA-18 Airborne Electronic Attack Concept aircraft. In December 2003, the U.S. Navy awarded a development contract for the EA-18G to Boeing. As primary contractor, Boeing was to construct the forward fuselage, wings and perform the final assembly. Northrop Grumman was the principal airframe subcontractor and they would supply the center and aft fuselage as well as the principal electronic combat system. In 2003, the Navy expected to receive 90 EA-18Gs. The first EA-18G test aircraft entered production on October 22, 2004. The first test aircraft, known as EA-1, was rolled out on August 3, 2006, before making its maiden flight at St. Louis on August 15, 2006. It was later ferried to Naval Air Station Patuxent River, Maryland on September 22, 2006. EA-1 primarily supports ground testing in the Air Combat Environment Test and Evaluation Facility Anechoic Chamber. The second aircraft first flew on November 10, 2006, and was delivered to NAS Patuxent River on November 29, 2006. EA-2 is an AEA flight test aircraft, initially flying on Pax River's Atlantic Test Range for developmental test of the AEA system before transitioning to the Electronic Combat Range in Naval Air Weapons Station China Lake in California. Both aircraft are assigned to VX-23 Salty Dogs. EA-1 and EA-2 are F/A-18F SF-134 and F-135, pulled from the St. Louis production line and modified by Boeing to the EA-18G configuration. However, since they were not built initially as Growlers, the Navy has designated these two test aircraft as EA-18Gs. There were 5 Growlers flying in the flight test program as of June 2008. Procurement. In an April 2006 report, the U.S. Government Accountability Office expressed concerns. The GAO felt the electronic warfare systems on the EA-18G were not fully mature, so there is risk of future cost growth and schedule delays. The report recommended that the DoD consider purchasing additional ICAP-3 upgrades for EA-6Bs to fill any current and near-term capability gaps and restructure the initial EA-18G production plans so that procurement takes place after the aircraft has demonstrated full functionality. In a 2008 GAO report, the director of the DoD's Operational Test and Evaluation Department questioned the workload on the 2-person Growler crew to replace the Prowler's crew of 4. The U.S. Navy has ordered a total of 57 aircraft to replace its existing EA-6B Prowlers in service, all of which will be based at NAS Whidbey Island save for Reserve Squadron VAQ-209 based at NAF Washington, MD. The U.S. DoD gave approval for the EA-18G program to begin low-rate initial production in 2007. The EA-18G was scheduled to finish flight testing in 2008. The Navy planned to buy approximately 85 aircraft in 2008. Approval for full-rate production was expected in the third quarter of 2009, and was given on November 23, 2009. Boeing planned to ramp up production to 20 aircraft per year. On July 9, 2009, General James Cartwright told the United States Senate Committee on Armed Services that the choice had been to continue the F/A-18 production line because the warfighting commanders needed more aerial electronic warfare capability that only the EA-18G could provide. The Navy's submission for the 2011 defense budget put forth by the Obama administration calls for 4 EA-18G Growler squadrons to be added to the fleet. On May 14, 2010, Boeing and the U.S. Department of Defense reached an agreement for a multi-year contract for an additional 66 FFs and 58 EA-18Gs over the next 4 years. This will raise the total to 114 EA-18Gs on order. The Pentagon unregistered trademark S Director of Operational Test and Evaluation determined that the EA-18G was still not operationally suitable in February 2011. Prime contractor Boeing is working to address issues with software updates. In December 2011, Operational Test and Evaluation concluded that the EA-18G software was operationally effective and suitable. Design. The Growler's flight performance is similar to that of the FF. This attribute enables the Growler to perform escort jamming as well as the traditional standoff jamming mission. Growlers will be able to accompany F/A-18s during all phases of an attack mission. In order to give the Growler more stable flight for the electronic warfare mission, Boeing changed the leading-edge fairings and wing fold hinge fairings, and added wing fences and aileron tripper strips. The Growler has more than 90% in common with the standard Super Hornet, sharing airframe, Raytheon AN/APG-79A ESA radar and weapon systems such as the AN/AYK-22 Stores Management System. Most of the dedicated airborne electronic attack equipment is mounted in the space that used to house the internal 20-ohm cannon and on the wingtips. 9 weapons stations remain free to provide for additional weapons or jamming pods. The added electronics include AN/ALQ-218 wideband receivers on the wingtips, and ALQ-99 high and low band tactical jamming pods. The ALQ-218 combined with the ALQ-99 form a full-spectrum electronic warfare suite that is able to provide detection and jamming against all known surface-to-air threats. However, the current pods will be inadequate against emerging threats. The EA-18G can be fitted with up to 5 ALQ-99 jamming pods and will typically add 2 AIM-120 AMRAAM or AGM-88 HARM missiles. The EA-18G will also use the INCANS interference cancellation system that will allow voice communication while jamming enemy communications, a capability not available on the EA-6B. In addition to the radar warning and jamming equipment, the Growler possesses a communications receiver and jamming system that will provide suppression and electronic attack against airborne communication threats. The poor reliability of the ALQ-99 jammer pod and frequent failures of the built-in test have caused crew to fly missions with undetected faults. The ALQ-99 has also interfered with the aircraft's AESA radar, and has imposed a high workload on the 2-man crew, along with reducing the Growler's top speed. Boeing is looking into other potential upgrades. The ALQ-99 radar jamming pod may be replaced in the future, and the company is looking into adding weapons and replacing the satellite communications receiver. The Growler is the initial platform for the next-generation jammer, which uses active electronically scanned array technology to focus jamming power exactly where needed. The NGJ was to be implemented on the F-35. However, in May 2012, the U.S. Navy decided to focus NGJ integration on the EA-18G for an expected in-service date of 2020, and defer work for the F-35. Boeing is also looking at exporting a Growler Lite configuration without the jamming pods for electronic awareness rather than electronic attack. 3 Growlers networked together can generate targeting tracks for hostile radio frequency sources in real time, but this is difficult to arrange with the current minimum-strength U.S. Navy squadrons. Operational history: United States. The first Growler for fleet use was officially accepted by VAQ-129 Vikings at NAS Whidbey Island, on June 3, 2008. The Navy planned to buy approximately 85 aircraft to equip 11 squadrons as of 2008. The EA-18G completed operational evaluation in late July 2009. The Growler was rated operationally effective and suitable for operational use. On August 5, 2009, EA-18G Growlers from Electronic Attack Squadron 129 and Electronic Attack Squadron 132 completed their first at-sea carrier-arrested landing aboard the USA Harry S. Truman, CVN-75. The first deployable EA-18G squadron is to be VAQ-132 Scorpions, which reached operational status in October 2009. The first Growler operational deployment was announced on February 17, 2011. In service, the EA-18's radio name during flight operations will be Grizzly. The Growler nickname sounded too much like the EA-6B's Prowler name, so Grizzly will be used to avoid confusion. With the termination of the EB-52H standoff jammer, the Growler will become the sole remaining manned tactical jammer, and Air Staff Requirements Director Major General David Scott has indicated that the USAF will seek to provide electronic warfare officers to fly on U.S. Navy Growlers, without providing funding to purchase additional aircraft. By May 2011, 48 Growlers had been delivered to the U.S. Navy. The EA-18G was first used in combat during Operation Odyssey Dawn, enforcing the UN no-fly zone over Libya. 5 EA-18Gs were redeployed from Iraq to support operations in Libya. Australia. In 2008, the Australian government requested export approval from the US government to purchase up to 6 EA-18Gs, which would be part of the order for 24 Fahrenheit per A-18F Super Hornets. On February 27, 2009, Defense Minister Joel Fitzgibbon announced that 12 of the 24 Super Hornets on order would be wired on the production line for future fit-out as EA-18Gs. The additional wiring would cost $35 Australian a million. The final decision on conversion to EA-18Gs, at a cost of $300 Australian a million, was to be announced in March 2012. On August 23, 2012, the Australian government announced that 12 A-18F Super Hornets would be fitted with Growler capability at a cost of $1.5 billion. Making the Royal Australian Air Force the only military other than the US to operate the Growler's electronic jamming equipment. On May 3, 2013, the Australian government announced that it will buy 12 new-build Growlers to supplement the existing Super Hornet fleet. No. 6 Squadron RAAF is expected to begin taking delivery of the Growlers in 2017. Operators: A United States Air Force, 390th Electronic Combat Squadron provides training for electronic warfare officers for Navy units. United States Navy, VAQ-129, VAQ-130, VAQ-132, VAQ-133, VAQ-135, VAQ-136, VAQ-137, VAQ-138, VAQ-139, VAQ-141, VAQ-209, VX-9, Naval Strike and Air Warfare Center. Specifications, data from Boeing brochure, U.S. Navy FF Fact File, General Characteristics, Crew, 2, Length, 60 feet 1.25 inches, Wingspan, 44 feet 8.5 in, Height, 16 feet, Wing Area, 500 FTA squared, Empty weight, 33,094 pounds, Loaded weight, 48,000 lba. Recovery weight, max takeoff weight, 66,000 pounds, Power plant, 2 General Electric F414 GE400 turbofans, dry thrust, 14,000 pound forces each, thrust with afterburner, 22,000 pound forces each. Internal fuel capacity, 13,940 pounds, external fuel capacity 9,774 pounds, performance, maximum speed, Mach 1.8 at 40,000 feet, range, 1,275 mph. Clean +2 AIM-9s, combat radius, 319 mph. For interdiction mission, ferry range, 1,800 mph. Range without ordnance, service ceiling, 50,000 feet, wing loading, 92.8 pounds FTA squared, thrust weight, 0.93, armament, guns, none, hardpoints, 9 total, 6 under wing, and 3 under fuselage with a capacity of 17,750 pounds. External fuel and ordnance. Notes: the 2 wingtips missile launcher rail for AIM-9 Sidewinder, found on the EF Super Hornet, have been replaced with ANALQ-218 detection pods, 6 removable underwing mounted hardpoints, 2 multi-mode conformal fuselage stations, 1 centerline fuselage removable hardpoint, for AN/ALQ-99 low-band jamming pod. Weapons employment. Currently, Phase I of the Growler will carry the AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles for self-protection at the two conformal fuselage stations and AGM-88 HARM missiles. The AA-49A2 gun system with the 20mm M61A2 cannon has been removed and replaced by a pod of electronic boxes that control the ANALQ-218 and assist with the coordination ANALQ-99 jamming attacks. According to the possible weapon configurations which were revealed, EA-18G would also be capable of performing time-sensitive strike missions, carrying AGM-154JSOW under wings, or multi-sensor reconnaissance missions with sharpened ANASQ-228 ACT FLIR on centerline and left conformal weapon stations, respectively. Avionics, Raytheon AN/APG-79 Active Electronically Scan Array Radar, Mnemonics, Incorporated 990-1119-001 Electronic Attack Unit AES Mission Computer, see also. Related development, McDonnell Douglas F/A-18 Hornet, Boeing FF Super Hornet, aircraft of comparable role, configuration and era, Northrop Grumman EA-6B Prowler, General Dynamics Grumman EF-111A Raven, related lists, list of active United States military aircraft, list of fighter aircraft, references, notes. Bibliography. External links, official webpage of the Boeing EA-18G Growler, EA-18G profile at globalsecurity.org, EA-18G program, the USA's electronic growler at defenseindustrydaily.com, EA-18G Growler new platform and capabilities set to unlevel the SEAD playing field. Flight International, July 8, 2008. When Hornets Growl. Air and Space, March 1, 2011. EA-18G Growler electronic attack aircraft, VAQ-141 Shadow Hawks EA-18G Growler, photo walk-around of two aircraft including the CAG Bird.